school improvement plan meeting. This is something the board looks forward to every year. We're happy. This is kind of new.
Everybody mute your mics, please.
So, so this is kind of new. We're working out the bugs, but you know, enjoy your everybody on mute. Okay, good. So I'll turn things over to Mike and we'll move forward with our meeting.
Thank you for turning it over to Mike while he's chewing a cracker. I've done that to Victoria a few times. It's usually me turning a meeting over to you while you're eating a sandwich. This time you got me with a cracker in my mouth, so turnabout's fair play. So I'm not sure who the first is today. It's right up there. Mountain View High School. So first of all, I guess you all are very fortunate and have the opportunity to be the only SIP presentations in person. So I know we were talking earlier, Kate and Amy and Jen, about this night is very similar to a New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve. We look forward to this all year long, and I know that you truly do. But then also to have the opportunity to do it in person tonight is quite a treat. So thank you all for being here. Honestly, this is our second meeting in person that we've had since we've been able to come back. I just want to say thank you for everything that all of you have done. Obviously, today being the first day that we've had at least K through 9 back with students on campus, and by the end of the week we'll have K-12. It's quite a achievement, and I appreciate everything that all of you have done in making that happen. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Matt as the first presenter tonight.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm honored to go first. This is great. I want to start just, I guess, our school improvement plan story, if you will, as it reads on our snapshot. Just talking about, at Mountain View High School, we have a slogan that we have used for many years called Thunder Family. Describes a lot of things in terms of school improvement. I think it really, what symbolizes it is that what we're talking about is supporting our kids and our families so that they can be successful at school, and when they graduate, they can be successful in life. And so we talk about school improvement. I can't help but point out just how our population, obviously I get to be the first one to say it's been a very challenging year since I got to go first, Captain Obvious, but we also have a growing diversity of population at our school. As of, I know just recently as this month, looking at our count, we again are a majority minority school. We have a rich diversity in our school. We have a lot of ethnicities, cultures, and races. And so as we looked at our school improvement, which is kind of supported by when you see our discipline proportionality report that's on the snapshot, but other reports that we run as well in data, is that we have students that need support still. We're proud of the work we do at Mountain View, but we've got work to continue. And that kind of brings us to where our goals were this year in moving forward with school improvement, which is really the overarching theme is the idea of equity. And so we really connect with the instructional intents of the district. Equity's really become this overarching guide for our work. And so we have 3 goals, but equity is really the primary goal and kind of the underpinning of all that work. Because what we're really trying to do is support all our kids to do really well. And so we have to have that lens. This year, our primary professional development has been our courageous conversations about race that everyone's doing around the district, and it's been really good for our staff. It has begun for our staff, many of them, that journey of coming to some understanding and learning. And then also for those folks on our staff that are a little ahead in that, they are starting to move forward. We've developed a pretty strong equity team that's kind of guiding a lot of our work. So in addition to that, we've really just tried to expose our staff to a variety of different equity books. And I think as we've talked about the pandemic, one of the things that has come out of that we really have looked at as a positive is looking at various practices within our school that we need to do to be more equitable with our students. And one of those big areas is grading. And so as a school, we have really gravitated towards the grading guidance that the district has put out for grading at the high school level. Quite frankly, we plan to keep that. And we really been encouraged by talking with Bill that maybe the district is also thinking about holding on to some of that grading practices that we have, and specifically balanced grading, and that's research backed. And we think it'll really help a lot of our students at the high school level specifically. As a kind of move forward with our other goals, we've always been focused on academic discourse. And again, we think equity is really the reason to really a way to look at that so we can help increase those levels. We hope with in-person schooling starting up again, it's going to be a lot easier for us to work on that. So we're excited about that. It's just been challenging, quite frankly, with the remote learning. And so we're excited to kind of move forward with that and try to get back into some classrooms and really monitor those things like we know how to do. Not that we didn't know how to do remote learning, but it was challenging to do some of these practices. So we're excited. Kind of the one thing I'll just kind of finish with that has been a focus of our school this year has been some of the work that we've done with the STAND organization that we've worked in for a couple of years and our freshman success team. And that has really been a really powerful tool this year, especially. That team is evolved a little bit. We've learned a lot from working the past couple of years with it, but we've really got a good team of teachers together at the freshman level. And they have made some goals around working with our Latino male students this past year. They were a group of students that, based on the data we've been looking at, that had been struggling. And so they set a goal to help those students achieve this semester. And we saw some really good results. And we're excited about that. The team is actually even met already, and they're going to refine that goal to really drill it down to the ELL population of those Latino male students. And so it's really exciting work. I think we're going to continue with that. And again, it just all centers on our focus on being a school that focuses on equity with equitable practices. They're going to help all our students succeed. And that's basically our school improvement plan journey at Mountain View.
That's the first applause of one of these meetings this year too. So good job, Matt. Way to go.
Ever, I think.
Ever. I'm going to tell you, it wasn't a huge round of applause, but there was some applause.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. We appreciate that. We'll hold all of our questions till the end, and then we'll ask away. So next up is Amy and she's going to share with us about Gila.
Perfect. So this is my first year at Henrietta Lacks Health and Bioscience High School, and I've just been really grateful for the staff there. Super collaborative, really work well together. One of the things that started out in me getting the position is immediately our Students of Color Union scheduled a meeting with me and presented me with a letter. And I think that with the new leadership in the building, they were just wanting to make sure that I was going to continue to move the work forward that had already been started. Really, everything was kind of in place when I got there. We had a staff. I interviewed staff, or I met with all of staff in the summer. They all were really interested in moving our equity work forward. And the Students of Color Union, through that letter, really presented us with a blueprint of how to move things forward for that year. In the letter, they kind of gave us what they wanted to see continue from the work that had been already happening. They wanted to increase representation in staff, and they wanted to see themselves in the healthcare professionals that are connected to our school. They wanted to see themselves in the curriculum, in our books, and in the stories they're told within our content area. They wanted us to be able to give staff the tools needed to be able to discuss race in the classroom and to be able to have the opportunity to examine their own bias and learn about privilege and how those things can influence larger structures and resources and curriculum in the classroom. They wanted Henrietta Lacks to continue to be more visible and wanted her story to be told on a larger level among our students and families, but also within our community. And they wanted us to continue to build partnerships that support diversity and bring professionals of color into our school to connect with students. And so those were kind of the things that they have laid out that they really wanted us to continue from the work that had started previously. Some of the things that we've done up until this point is that we've had the opportunity to hire 4 positions. We've been able to fill or offer all 4 of those positions to somebody of color who is going to be able to increase diversity within our staff. We've added 2 bilingual employees to be able to help with community partnerships. In terms of representation in our curriculum and our books and the stories they're told within their content areas, I have an amazing instructional coach and, like I said, a really collaborative staff. And so we did some work around framing our planning to include these questions for teachers to ponder as they're planning learning experiences for kids. Who is represented in my content this week? Who are the experts? Who are the victims and who are the heroes? What are we teaching the kids about themselves? And in what ways does this week's content support students in pursuit of social justice? Ways to get kids thinking about those things and ways to get our teachers thinking about those essential questions as they plan. In terms of teachers being able to have the tools to discuss race in the classroom, I mean, courageous conversations and the training that is offered to staff and offered to administrators has been essential in moving that work forward. I mean, it is what gives us the tools to talk about race in the classroom. So I'm super grateful for that support from the district. In terms of Henrietta Lacks and her story, we had the Senate resolution passed just a couple weeks ago, honoring Henrietta Lacks and honoring her contribution to health and science. And the kids, I mean, that was everything to the kids. The possibility of being able to make real change was very powerful for them. And I know Craig came out and did a video on the Henrietta Lacks resolution. And so that was a really great opportunity for them. One of the things that we also did in terms of increasing curriculum and better representation in curriculum was the $10,000 that Gila was able to spend on library books, course materials, and that came directly from the equity audit of the library resources and materials that we used our community partnerships and our students of color to give us guidance on what they were looking for and what they wanted to see, and an equity survey to help guide what we would purchase and to kind of audit like what we already had to make sure that it was representative of everybody that attends our school. The community partnerships piece. So we are starting a CHAMPS mentorship program, and this is in partnership with the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine. And what that is basically taking our students and are partnering them with a current medical student in college. And that partnership is starting at the beginning of March, and we are going to do everything we can to partner our students with a medical student in college that has similar backgrounds, similar experiences, so that they can help partner with them on like what looks good on a medical school application, what are some barriers that you might face, and what are some solutions or ways around those barriers. Next year, we are going to be a site for our National Medical Fellowships Diverse Medical Scholars Program. So that's an opportunity to bring medical scholars of color into our building to partner with our students and to create more partnerships in the community to bring more diverse healthcare professionals into the field. We are going to do an affinity groups panel for healthcare professionals that will also bring that diversity in for our students. So we've done all of this. And so part of what I said to our Students of Color Union is that I wanted to get together with them again in at the end of the semester to talk about the work we move forward, to make sure that we are honoring the commitment that we made to them to move the work forward. And we went through all of this. And we talked about what they had needed and how we had responded. And they're very happy with the progress that we've made. One of the things that they want to see more from us on is making sure that Henrietta Lacks is, her story is interwoven into all the different content areas of our school. Right now, they have an opportunity to read the book, talk about her story, and do some specific things around that. But finding a way to make sure that she's represented in our science classes, our math classes, some of the things that happen, so that her story is just better understood. And so we're doing some work on that. Our next steps is obviously to continue the work around courageous conversations and giving staff more opportunity to get used to the protocol and give them more experiences with the protocol. At the end of all of this, through courageous conversations, we're going to have an end of the year make. And what that is basically our students of color and our teachers are going to sit down and have a two-way conversation. And our students are going to be able to speak with them about what it's been like as a student of color in public school and at Gila, and what are some things that we can do to get better in that area and to serve them to the best of our ability. We're going to continue culturally responsive teaching and infusing multiple perspectives into our curriculum. And I am going to develop a community group of our community members of color, our teachers, students, staff, and talk about how we can make Henrietta Lacks even more visible and get her story out there into the community. Yeah, and so that's kind of where we're at right now. And I'm excited. We had freshmen back today for the second day. And I just have to say, it's just everything to see them again and to have them back in the building in whatever capacity, with face masks, 6 feet apart, it doesn't matter. It's just seeing them in person has just like meant the world to everybody, our teachers, our staff, everyone. So thank you.
Thanks, Amy. I think that was a louder one.
That was louder. I feel like that was, but it was a better presentation. I'm just joking, man. You did great, both of you.
Okay, who do we have up next? Kate for Y East, yeah. I was getting the right bunch.
That's great. And I would echo that. Today is the second day of having 6th, 7th, and 8th graders back on campus, and I knew that the energy and the joy would just increase so much, but I'm still have been surprised by how moving it's been to walk around and just see the kids in their classrooms working with teachers. So it's great timing for coming and sharing with you. So it's nice to see everyone. I was thinking about last year at this time on what my goals were, and last year at this time, I've been in the position for about 6 weeks, and some of the data that I shared at that time, I kind of called it a tale of two cities, with looking at whether it was teacher survey data with strongly agree or strongly disagree, or student achievement data. There were a lot of goals I think that we had around coming together this year and having more unity, as well as getting ready for the dean hire and the 6th period day. And so thank you for the dean hire, by the way. That's been a wonderful addition this year. I think that the other goal that I had last year too was using culturally responsive teaching as a way for staff to really come together around serving students. There's a lot of excitement in the building about exploring that further. And I think that a lot of those goals remain the same. And the pandemic, I think this year has, if anything, has brought staff closer together and really strengthened our commitment to equity work. In that, I think that it has laid bare and made visible inequalities that have always existed in the schools, but now I think even more evident as we are looking at things like grading data. So, and looking at kind of our goals this year and where we are, I think that one of the things that kind of has some momentum, which is similar to Mountain View, is looking at equitable grading practices. I think the pandemic has showed us, looking at our F grade and ways for ways students are accessing curriculum, that we need to do a better job of looking at different grading practices, and not always doing the same percentages or things that are historically based, maybe aren't serving today's students as well. So there's a lot of, I think there's some excitement and momentum in the building around looking at equitable grading practices. And as we looked at our F rate for the first semester, we made a commitment to do some book studies, like we're doing a grading for equity book study, as well as to do no credit for the semester, because we thought that was more appropriate for all the work that the students have been able to put in for the first semester of the school year. Also, we remain, I think, very committed to culturally responsive teaching practices and knowing students and families. And one data piece that I thought was just a really bright spot this year was about a month ago. We had a week of multilingual family listening sessions over Zoom, and we actually had about 50 families come. And we are, partnering a little bit with Mountain View as well. We had, some in their sort of representation there as well, because we're all, part of the same community, serving kids together. And we asked families really what their hopes and dreams are for their students. And I think from those sessions, it became clear that it can't be a one-off. It has to be an ongoing relationship and dialogue. It's really a two-way dialogue, and not just schools, putting out the information and making sure it's in Spanish, but really being responsive. And we're looking into how we can hire sort of our own sort of in-building Spanish-speaking liaison to even better serve families and to make sure that they have a centralized point of contact, because that really emerged from the listening sessions as a need. So I think that was, something that we're excited about this year. And then another data point, I think, I think our staff has really come together around wanting to know their students well in order to serve them as teachers. And as we looked at transitioning to the second semester and looking at our master schedule and deciding how are we going to serve those students who are remaining remote and also serve students who come back in the building, we had 100% of the staff agree to teach in the simultaneous teaching model. And that one I thought was so moving. It's not the easiest model to teach in, and we're still working on it. This is our first week with all the kids back in the building who are going to be coming back. And concurrent or simultaneous teaching, I think, is very complex. But the teachers all chose that because of how much they value the consistency of those relationships with the students and families this year, and how important it was for them to keep their students who they already had gotten to get to know, and to protect and buffer their students from another change this year, in a year where they've already had to make so many sacrifices. And it also showed that the staff can come together and really put kids first and all work together and have a consensus on something. And I think that was a really exciting data point to see in terms of kind of building that unity within the building. So I think going forward, continuing with those listening sessions, continuing our culturally responsive teaching work and looking at equitable grading practices, as well as now having a lot more of a blueprint for how to have some of these difficult conversations in terms of our courageous conversations training that we've been working on this year too, and giving us a protocol for that, as well as giving people a way to explore their own journey and different biases that they bring into the classroom, I think has also been extremely valuable. So in a year that has been all the things unprecedented, challenging, complex, all the words we could think of, I think I really am excited and happy for a lot of the work that we're doing at Rice, and I feel excited to share some of that data.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, Alex, time to fill us in on what's going on at Ellsworth. Oh, did I? Oh, no, I got them in order. I always worry I'm gonna get them out of order.
So just kind of going back to where we started and where we are now, we had some clear expectations last year around this teaching and learning cycle. And our plan last year was to focus on intentional planning and teaching with SEL practices built in. And we didn't, and then February and March hit, and the pandemic, and our natural next steps was assessments on that wheel, and we never really got to it. And it was a promise to our staff that we weren't going to abandon the work we started. And so we wanted to continue to focus on that work that we started last year. So it was that common next step was to create common assessments, but we wanted to do it with the equity lens. as we move forward too. So, and that was to make sure that we aligned our practices. We guaranteed all students who received equitable learning opportunities based on data. And through some of this, common assessments in math were created. So we could, and we had protocols to go along with that, a design protocol that we used as a team there, and also just a data analysis protocol that we worked with. And then our next step we were seeing after we got our common math assessments completed was on to reading, and we were noticing that our multilingual students really were being held back based on language development and not comprehension. And so we have, as a team, and I have a very passionate instructional coach and language specialist. They're diving into this work with our staff, kind of recreating this common assessment and reading, and really looking at language development. So we're not when it comes to our equity work too, we want to have that sense of belonging through our equity work for all of our staff, students, and families. And we've done some surveys during this time, and we got our equity committee started right away, and we had a lot of big ideas. We realized we weren't all there yet, and luckily we had courageous conversations. To that work is allowing us to really understand where our own biases are coming from, and understandings and actions, so we can best meet the needs of our students. And it's really anchored our work. The courageous conversations anchored our work to put a lens on Ellsworth and look at some of our subgroups. So even looking at our discipline report, we were looking at our multilingual students or our SLC students and realizing some of the biases we have, and fixing our core is really what we're working on. Because we know that if we want to make a bigger change, we have to fix our core first. So as we continue to do that, and as we move forward, we're looking at, we've really focused on our sense of belonging surveys with our families and our students and our staff, and we're working our way down because we know that changes. With we can make a shift within our staff, that's going to affect our students. If we can get our families supported, we know that that's going to affect our students and the progress that needs to be made. So, and all of it is around it in an asset-based lens. How we look at kids and how we look at families and staff.
Bobby, share with us about Crestline.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening. So nice to be here. And last spring, in reflecting with our experiences with remote learning, we discussed how to build stronger partnerships with our families to make sure students were staying engaged during our remote learning experiences and moving into fall. So we took a lens of building partnerships with our family through a strength-based lens, and really creating that link from home to school during a pandemic. And we really wanted to focus on that as kids move from one teacher to the next teacher and bridge that relationship. So we in the fall moved forward with a beginning family interviews. All teachers interviewed their families. Like we do with Flag Kids, we made it a K-5 expectation. So we had a script that we utilized with all of our teachers when meeting with our families, and took things into consideration. What's the child's story? What's the family story? What are distance learning considerations to take in? What are continued partnerships? And also coaching our teachers about if you're unsure how to pronounce the child's name or the child's last name, how to prompt for that and how to bridge that relationship and understanding their cultural backgrounds and needs, and So we started that with our families, and all of our teachers did that. And it really began to increase our engagement in the fall. And families were easier to approach, easier to access. And that was the other thing we expected our teachers to make sure we knew how to communicate with families, whether that was a home visit, email, texting, whatever it was, we were going to do it. So that was kind of our launch into our family partnership relationship. And then with that, we moved into our equity audits. And with our equity audits, we brought in families and parents virtually. And we went through our equity interviews with our parents. And from that interview, we had some parents who really wanted to continue the conversation on how to engage our families of color or multilingual families. Do we separate out our Spanish-speaking families with our English? What does that look like? So we moved forward with a family committee, and we named it FEAT, F-E-A-T, Family Equity Advisory Team. And so we also discussed what that might look like, because sometimes well, not sometimes, when a principal leads something or your instructional coach leads something, the narrative changes. Even though parents are there, they're not quite sure how to really be transparent with their thinking and their feelings of what might not be going right at your school, especially if the principal is sitting there. And so we worked with Clarissa, my language special and instructional coach, leaned on her a little bit with some feedback. And how do we really make this a parent-led group, but still stay engaged, that our staff still stay engaged? So we launched that committee and that team, and our parent lead is a mom, has a second grader, and she is a parent of color, and she is leading and facilitating the team, and myself and my coach and ELD member, we attend the meeting at the start, and then we leave, and the parents have that conversation without us there. And then we loop back with our parent facilitator, and she gives us guiding questions and things that we can move forward to have a more inclusive, equitable school. So for instance, our first meeting was in January, and the feedback was that my Spanish-speaking families are really frustrated with my front office. And I knew they were already, but it's because I don't have Spanish-speaking staff in my front office, and that's a barrier for them to get into the building. So we took that feedback in January, and so within my hiring practices, we were able to fortunately post something, and I was able to hire a bilingual paraeducator. And so fast forward to, we had our last meeting last week. In February, we had another meeting. So we attended and said, here's an actionable item that we want to have a Spanish-speaking staff member in office during these hours. And so then they were able to receive that feedback. And today, actually, one of our parents that's on that team was having an issue with the attestation, and she was able to go into the office and speak to my staff member who speaks Spanish, and that really removed a lot of anxiety and stress for her. So we are looking for feedback from our parents to move forward with problem solving, parent events, volunteering within the classroom, and really trying to advocate for our students of color and multilingual parents. And the long-term goal, and it's also working with our staff through the lens of equitable access, continuing that with our reading instruction, making sure all of our services are within the classroom setting. No students are pulled out. Everybody has the same access to core, and utilizing that culturally responsive lens as we educate our kids, so that we continue to grow our inclusive practices at Castlemaine. Family partnership for us and the Hunt team is really kind of moving forward, so that our parents who haven't had a voice before are really engaged and feeling like they have a voice and a say. I haven't got the feedback from last week's meeting yet, but I met with my coach and she said they met till 8:30 and they have a ton of things to say to me and share with me, which is super exciting because that tells me they feel like it's a safe environment and that we're receptive to feedback and we're willing to engage in that work and that advocacy for our students. So that's really the lens we took this year and feel like it's been exciting and challenging all at once. And our teachers are embracing the Courageous Conversation work, talking about race, having explicit conversations, practicing dialogue with each other, because sometimes if you don't talk about race, you don't know how to articulate it. So I often talk to my closest people within my building when I have, so that I know what I'm going to say to a parent if they push back. Or I know what I'm going to say to a teacher if we have a different perspective or different places on our journey through the lens of race, and isolating that race and having a personal reason for why we believe and have our stance around racism and becoming racist will. So really having that dialogue with teachers and being okay with that and not being scared of it, because we know as a woman, a white woman of privilege, that we can often stray away from those race conversations. And so we're really pushing that with not only our staff, but our community members and understanding their journey, but also what we need to be doing to advocate to make sure our students have full access in their education as they move to middle school. So that's our journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Okay. What's on for Marion, Matt?
No, I think this is the wrong one. This is the wrong one. I said my goal was about survival. Anyway, so just a couple of quick fun notes is just to let you guys all know. Right now, we're sitting at, as of today, we're sitting at 80% of our students are percent Marion, which is super exciting. And thanks to middle school and high school for going back, because with each additional grade that goes back in the upper grades, we get more students coming back from remote learning to in-person learning. So that's a super awesome thing that's happening right in middle school. Another cool fun thing is, if you guys didn't know, our school is being rebuilt, and we're really, really excited about that because we have to relocate to Image. We have been calling it the Taj Mahal just because it is so much grander and bigger and more wonderful than our previous location, but we're really excited to get to our new school. So we're pretty excited about that. So a little bit about Marion. We have a mission statement, and that's a vision and a mission merged together. That is, every student is capable of learning when they feel safe and valued, with their needs met through rigor engagement. So each thing that we do through our school, we have to run everything through that lens. And when we think about meeting our students' needs through rigor engagement, we've been looking at supporting our students' needs in through sheltered instruction and specifically around comprehensible input and interaction. So one of the big questions we've been grappling with is, what does it look like to have social interaction and comprehensible input, which is there's a lot of interaction that happens between the teacher and the student in a socially distanced classroom. So that's one of the things that we've really been grappling with this year. And the best way to be able to do that is to create a strong social emotional building base to be able to meet those goals of being able to have that social interaction. Because if they don't feel safe, valued, and have their social emotional needs met, then we can access the learning. So being able to focus on social emotional health has been one of our real key goals in being able to have access, so students have access to their learning, and to be able to show curiosity about what they're engaging with, whether it's through Group A, Group B, or remotely. One of our classes today, I was in, the teacher has done an amazing job of inviting, so our asynchronous students, our remote students, and our in-person students are all together all the time. And kids that are remote or asynchronous have learning partners with kids in the class. So that's one of the ways that a couple of our teachers have really been working on to be able to engage everyone at one time, so that when we think about how many days of school we have left, we have to cut that. So how do we engage kids more in a broader way to be able to get all their needs met? And so that's one of the things that we've been pretty excited about being able to do. One of the other things that we've been working on is working on centering our work around race and making sure that that's a focal point of a lot of our conversations from our other schools. And so one of those ways we do that is really working on building our racial consciousness. And one of the things that we talk about, I've been thinking about quite a bit for the last couple of years with our culturally responsive team, is that if we can't do better, or we can't do better if we don't know better. But once we know better, we must do better by our students, by ourselves, by our families, by our whole community. So that's one of the things that we really have been digging into as a group. And one of the ways that we did that is looking at our disproportionality data. And I have it here on our, I put it up there as a focal point as one of the things that we really dug deep into our disproportionate behavior data. And one of the things that we found was very striking was that 20% of our total referrals for our school year last year up through March 13 was we were referring Black or African American students. And of that total number of referrals that they generated, 57% of them were Black African American girls. And of those referrals, 72% of those involved 3 kids in the family. And then the next step beyond that is when we were digging even deeper, is we found out that 70 of those referrals, that's 65% of the total girls identified as Black African American, were from unbanked. So when we think about that, we really go back to that whole notion about, when we know better, we must do better. So that's kind of, that's right.
Okay,
Thanks,
no
Milk
plan. So for a long time at Mill Plain, we've been really focusing on culture and a strong culture for learning for both adults and students. And this pandemic has, it's never proven more important for that strong culture for learning to be intact, as we asked teachers and students and families to look over like pancake and do things completely differently. So seeing the evidence of not just teachers, but students and parents, and being willing to dig into a completely different way of teaching and learning during a pandemic, when not just school was different, but life was very different, was evident in our community. And that was really an exciting thing to celebrate, because as everywhere, things were hard this year. So when we sat here last year and we were talking about our goals, Mill Plain was focused on 2 tenets. One was the kind of more content curricular tenet, And we had been working really hard last year and actually in previous years through math and last year through ELA to be aligned of a system across our building and therefore across the district with aligned units and curricular and instructional systems. So we were in the midst of that. We had gone through our school improvement process, and for the last 5 years, we've used a process based out of DataWave, which takes student data, triangulated data, historical data, and well, state, local, and then formative and summative assessments to create student growth goals. And in previous years, they've been around math. Last year, we created them around literacy to align with our goal. And we got to about this time last year, and it all shut down. So this year, we continue to focus around those goals of comprehension, K through 5, but look through the lens of remote teaching and remote 2.0, turning to hybrid, sharing remote students and hybrid students, and really focusing on instructional practices that we're engaging for students, because engagement has been challenging. And the second tenet, more around prevention than equity. Last year and years prior, we had worked on developing a PBIS system, a system that was really focused around trauma-informed practices, shelter and instruction practices, creating a tiered system and hiring through that high poverty staff members to help really support those students who were showing us that they needed extra supports with behavior and engagement. And that turned out that was students who were moving through our tiered system were showing evidence of improvement. And so some of what we were doing was working, which is exciting. That's to add to that tiered system, but we were showing improvement, which was exciting. As we moved into this year, we expanded our focus and intentionally to focus around the lens of race. And we have had a very in-depth book study and equity audit that we're continuing to work on tomorrow with Clarissa, but around looking through the lens of race, which is a conversation we hadn't had specifically in the past, so intentionally. So it's been really good learning. We have not focused it around teaching practices yet. We've really focused on getting staff to read, understand, reflect, and be aware of their own racial consciousness, racial biographies, being able to practice using the protocols and pillars of courageous conversations through really understanding what those 4 agreements mean, understanding what the 6 conditions are, and how to use the compass as we engage in those conversations. So that when we do get into the teaching practices piece next year with culturally responsive teaching, and so on, we are in a place where we're able to have conversations, and we have practiced having conversations that might be difficult when we get to the personal level of talking about kids and our practices and how they directly affect the kids. So that's been really exciting work. And also through that equity piece, when we talk about the tiered system that we had in place prior to the pandemic, we had access to kids all day, every day. And because we don't have access to all kids every day, and some kids not at all, we've really changed the way we look at intervention for kids who are needing that with engagement, more engagement than academics at this point. We just need them coming. We need them coming to school, and need them coming to class when there isn't school. There's a real perception out there that there's only school 2 days a week, including sometimes in my own home. I have to go to bed now. There's no school tomorrow. There's school tomorrow. So we've kind of shifted the way that we're looking at intervention for kids, and we're doing a lot of intervention during their remote days versus their in-person days to get them. The teachers have got them 2 days a week the ones that are there, but the ones that aren't there, we are using our intervention paraprofessionals and support staff, learning support, ELSF to try to engage those kids on it. And it's, I wish I could report it's been more successful. It is for some families and it's not for some families. And so that's, you know, then the tiered work, we continue to work through tiers and make home visits and parent phone calls and offering the support that families need and the encouragement and understanding and compassion that families need in order to make this work for their kids until we are back in one place. So that's kind of what we've been doing with them.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello.
What's happening at Riverview?
Well, I want to start off by first just saying that I am so proud to be part of the Evergreen School District. I'm so proud of Riverview. It's just to be where we are right now and have kids back is amazing. So thank you for all the work that went into that. So at Riverview, we've kept our strong focus on instruction, specifically reading. And I was really nervous at the beginning of this year, thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to be teaching our kindergartners going into first grade in a remote setting how to read? The teachers really rose to the challenge and made it work through meeting with kids in small groups, guided reading, and they are continuing that practice now in person. And so our reading data is showing that kids are making significant growth, even under the circumstances that we've had this year. We've also kept our goal on sheltering our instruction. We're using SIAP strategies. And that just makes teaching so clear for all students. So it doesn't matter if you're a student that has a disability, if you're a student that's getting served in Excel, if you're a student that has a language proficiency and might need more support. SIAP strategies and sheltering instruction really provides access to the learning for all kids. And so we've kept that up. That's been something that's been happening at Riverview for a while now. But specifically this year, we focused on feedback, review, and assessment, which is such a critical aspect in the teaching and learning cycle, and especially this year, giving kids that feedback on their learning. So whether they're remote or in person, the kids are getting feedback from teachers and having that conversation with them. I was just in a first grade classroom and they were teaching writing and the teacher's modeling, doing a great job. And then it's time for the kids to go and write independently. The teacher walked over and talked to the student, gave the little girl some feedback. And the girl was saying, oh my gosh, this is so much better in person. This is so much easier. And so the kids and everyone they're just so thankful to have that instruction and to be thankful. At Riverview, we're also on a journey to increase student engagement and voice with inclusiveness. We have started student advisory meetings. So I'm meeting with fifth grade students and just getting their input on how the school should be run. We're also having student-led clubs. We have a Harry Potter fan club starting this Thursday. Kids are really excited about. And we're really working on creating a culture where students know that they're part of the decisions that are being made at the school. You know, up to 2 girls came up to me this morning and were telling me that they really think I should change the way that we're giving out breakfast in the morning. So they're like, you know, Miss Crowley, this system's got to change. They're being delivered to the classroom, but sometimes kids want them, sometimes they don't. We really try to fix it. So I just love that kids are feeling that sense of, you know, being part of fixing and the decisions at school. We're also working hard to increase students. Our students that are served in the ELC program, which is our special ed program that is housed at Riverview, we're really working with the staff and students to increase their access into gen ed. And it's not, when I say increase their access to gen ed, it doesn't mean just that they have seats in their gen ed classroom, but they're really part of that gen ed community and they have that strong sense of belonging. And it means that the teachers, the gen ed teacher and the special ed teacher have a strong sense of shared responsibility when it comes to serving that kid and meeting their needs. And then our overarching goal at Riverview, as we've heard around the room, and again, another reason why I'm very proud of Evergreen is just around our equity work and our focus. I'm really proud of our staff. They've really been open to learning and been taking and being serious about their engagement with the courageous conversations. We have an equity team that is leading the PD for the rest of the staff around equity. And we're doing a little bit of like a train the trainers model. So we're going through the courageous conversation module, and our equity team then is presenting equity to the staff. And we came up with an equity goal around belonging and inclusion, and we're measuring it with giving it to students. It's a 13-question survey that we're giving to K-5 students to get their sense of how they feel at Riverview. And then we're going to be looking at the data closely, really with our students of color, and making sure there is a strong sense of belonging. But we know there's work that needs to be done. Our eventual goal is to have a parallel process. We're not there yet, but we really want to have it be where we're examining ourselves and our perspectives and our understanding during PD and continuing that work. That takes time. But then at the same time, in the near future, we want to have a parallel practice where we're then looking at our instruction. Because as we know, the one thing that we do have control over is what's happening at Riverview and what's happening in the classrooms at Riverview. And so a big part of courageous conversation is that personal, local, and immediate of what we have control over when it comes to equity. And really thinking about, I heard a lot of people talk about culturally responsible teaching practices, but really in reflecting on it and thinking about who are the voices that we're hearing from in the classrooms, who am I calling on? What are the instructional practices that I'm doing to make sure that all students have access to learning, so that we can increase our outcomes. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Okay, John.
All right. Let's go. Okay, so first off, I just want to say thank you to all you guys for your leadership for this entire year. And especially today, because my daughter attended high school for the very first time. It was her first day as a freshman. She just was texting the entire day, narrating the day to my wife and myself, and just how emotional that made us as parents, and just how, we didn't think it was going to happen. And she just like, oh my God, I love it here. It's so awesome. So it was an emotionally proud dad day for me, and I just want to say thank you to you guys. Anyways, about Sunset, much like these guys, we were working on a lot of great things last year. Really trying to focus more on our teaching strategies to support our ELA learners. Because looking at the data, we knew that was the most underachieving group, primarily because we hadn't done a good job of equipping our teachers to do a good job for ELA students. So we started that work and started working on different strategies to help. And with the purchase of classroom, the IRAs, and those kinds of things, we did some things that we thought were going to be very, very beneficial. And we had kids talking in the classroom way more than they ever have, and they were able to share language and use language in ways that were very, very meaningful. But one of the things we noticed is that through that whole process, that our teachers still weren't dialing in the scaffolds that each individual student needed at their specific level. So where it was benefiting some, we still weren't getting all. So as we, kind of shut down and had some reflection time in March, and we're able to kind of chew on it a little bit, started back up this school year in a remote setting. We're like, what can we do as a staff to change some things around? So we really started trying to fine tune, and we're trying to use this environment that we're in with a very small number of students in each individual classroom, and really hyper focus on just a couple of kiddos that might be in this one secondary classroom that are ELA, and just really dig into their specific needs, trying to find that silver lining. And for this is what we believe is going to really help move the meter for those specific students as they keep going up. So that's primarily our professional development work, in addition to this conversation, because, and when we think about this professionality and the behavior part, it's all an intertwined braid of things. A lot of students misbehave because they don't understand and they can't keep up academically. They're not keeping up academically because teachers need more tools to be able to support them in their needs. So as we continue to grow and develop and learn and dig into this work, it is our belief that all these students, the behaviors will take care of themselves for the most part when the students are engaged in learning. And so that's kind of been our main focus and our motivation over the last, since this time last year. The other thing that we're kind of starting to address is we did also a couple of years ago hire some paraeducators to help with the behaviors that were happening. And what we had noticed along our journey was that our paraeducators ended up becoming the best friends of these kiddos that were, needing to stay in class and to learn. And so they would do things and leave class and work to go find the paraeducator because they had a problem to solve. So talking with some of my colleagues and just kind of figuring out how they solved this similar problem. Now we have paraeducators who go in and stand in for the teacher while the teacher goes out and solves the problem with the student. So the students can make that connection, that close relationship with the teacher so that they can continue to, work through their problems together, work through their cycles together. And again, the idea is that, they won't have to elope anymore to solve the problems. They'll be able to go directly to the teacher and say, hey, I have an issue with this. When can we talk about it? And this is, younger students that really have a hard time with emotional regulation that are needing these skills built within them to live and work in our society. So those are the main things that we're working on. I'm loving what Bobby said about family engagement. That's something that we've been working very, very hard on, trying to figure out how a better way to get families involved with our school. It's something that we're desperately needing to do. We've had some plans. We've had made some small steps to get that happening, and then obviously everything shut down. So now it's just on reserve. And I was on a meeting today. I just want to throw the biggest shindig in September. Hopefully we're rolling and just get our families and just let them up and just say, hey, this is who we are. We're glad you're back. School's back open. This is your community and your place to come and be. But we're planning the shindig right now. We're trying to work that out. But I'm very, very excited about it. And just want to take Bobby's idea of faith and just figure out how to set up that structure to get that feedback, to do better for our community, to do better for our parents, to do better for our students. That's that.
Don? Okay, appreciate hearing from all of you. And now I'm going to open it up to the board to ask any questions they might have. Do you want to start, Rachel? Yep.
Let Rob start. I'll ask all the questions. I don't know. I'm actually not quite ready with a question.
Wait.
There you are.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm starting. Thanks, everybody. It's really fun to hear about the stories about getting kids back in school. And Dawn, I think I'll come to your shindig when you have it because it's going to be exciting. And I feel like, and I could be completely off base, but I feel like people in general in our communities are just going to appreciate our schools so much more because they've been away for so long that just even at like the high school level when we're seeing kids back in activities and how much excitement there is around that, and just people so thrilled that their kids are able to participate in things again and be with their peers. And we got to see some numbers today, and I'm glad that you brought up the numbers and the percentage that now are in class because we were able to see it district wide. And I want all of our kids to get back in person, and I think we're getting close. And I'm really hopeful that next year we're going to be back maybe almost to regular, right? And our kids are getting that instruction every day. And I guess if I had a question, two questions, because this has actually been something on my mind for a long time. And I probably should have asked a long time ago. But Matt kind of brought it up when we were joking about being on our cameras and the high school kids and how, and I attended a couple classes at Evergreen, and I think some of the boards had some chances to hop in on some classes, and no one had their camera on. And my son's doing a student teaching right now, and he told me his first day, he's like, I saw two faces, right? And I'm in elementary. The kids have their cameras on when they're, but then what about middle school? So after 6th grade, it's no longer like cool, right? And no high school kids ever, like hardly. Yeah. Why do we think that is? I'm just curious because
I can tell you from experience, they're either sleeping, downstairs getting something to eat, playing video games, and these are all things I've walked in on my freshman doing while he's
Yeah.
in class.
yeah, so it's basically that lack of engagement, which is really what's concerned me, and so that's why I'm like, we got to get our kids back in class, and now that they're back at least 2 days a week, it's fantastic. So I just wonder about 7th grade and on, right? There's something that happens after 6th grade where their camera doesn't work or their camera shy. But I guess Matt, you brought up that great point about your teacher that's doing, and everybody's in at one time. How much of that's happening across the board? Because that seems like a great plan, but I don't know if that's happening very often.
I love hearing about that. That was cool.
And hopefully, because we know that some kids, and I'm not sure because if they're not on the screen, I'm not sure how we can tell if they're doing better remotely. Maybe it's by the quality of their work, but if that's going to be an option in the future, just something that I think we need to think about. But I mean, that's just thoughts that go through my head. But thank you all for the work. I know that you've put in a lot of extra effort just to get our kids back in class, and I so much appreciate it.
I don't have a question, but I will just ready. Just share my appreciation for everything you guys are doing. We've had the privilege of, you guys are our last group, so to hear and see all of the great things that you as our school leaders are doing. This has not been an easy time for anybody by far. It's been wild. Let's just put it that way. I don't want to hear that word unprecedented anymore. But you guys have jumped in, taken, the directions and run with it, and have been very creative, and done everything you guys have possibly could to get our students back in the classrooms. And, that's evident with our high school starting this week. I have a freshman, so he got to go to school on Monday. And then my kindergartner and my 5th grader have been in for a while. So yes, I have 2 days a week with no at home. So I just thank you guys for all of the hard work that you guys have put in during this time. You guys make it look easy, but we know it has not been an easy task at all. So we appreciate you as well for all the hard work and all the care that you guys have put into this transition back into schools for our kids. So,
I might be ready.
yo, you're ready? Okay.
Well, I appreciate the time to kind of gather, because there was a lot of information coming at me. I think of this feeder pattern as mine because I like to say this all the time. I went to Marion, and then I went to Y East, and then I went to Mountain View. I was talking with Matt about someone who worked in the counseling center at Mountain View without realizing that it was no longer the counseling center. It was the counseling center in 1986. We were just about to lose those spaces anyway to something much better. And I'm really looking forward to that, but there's nostalgia in those spaces for me. So I think about that a lot. And I'm hearing, I just listened to you guys and just took notes about Gila's student group, some other things that I kind of wonder whether the pandemic gave us permission to do things that we're going to be able to keep. That's been the question for me thinking about this throughout the whole thing, is that what did it expose? You talked about some of that, especially with the discipline data and some of the inequities. But what in the, I guess, the frantic invention that everybody's had to do in order to bring something to kids and students this year looks like keepers? What do you want not to go away?
Part of our work is brokering experiences for kids, like finding ways for kids to get access to experiences that they otherwise would not have access to. And I feel like as much as we've been Zooming and Google Meeting, I think it opens up a lot of doors that I never necessarily considered before around being able to connect kids with a healthcare professional on the East Coast or out of this country. And it's not something that we weren't able to do before, but I don't think that I thought about in the way that I do now, how much easier it's going to be to access this for kids. And it just wasn't on my radar before this.
Is this pandemic and the way that we have set up remote learning really allowed us to talk about really, really like upfront learning that we haven't been able to really do in the past because it's kind of been taboo to bring that up with people. I don't know why, but it just has been. And one of the biggest issues that have led to, quite frankly, a lot of work that has also been costly economically is the way that teachers do it. Because students have a better chance to fail than they do to pass, utilizing a lot of the traditional ways that we do it. The EPS rating guidance that we adopted at high school asked us to balance grading and also students to show their work through the whole semester. These are very simple things that we should keep because they allow students to be successful when they either start learning or have issues. And it's research based. In other school districts around the country, we brought up a book that we read, grade correctly, handled it a couple years ago. It's a great book. School districts on the East Coast have been using this strategy. Other districts, it's not like some grandiose revolutionary thing. It was really saying we've got to get rid of some of the ways that we grade that just we learn from being at school, we learn from other teachers that we never really thought about. And I think if you look at equity, there's a lot to equity that we still have to talk about. But if we want to see some real progress, one way would be to come up with some grading guidelines that the district can think of that are very similar to some things that FILA does with standard-based grading that you can utilize quickly on a comprehensive high school. And I really think there's a couple of things as far as balance grading, which really is like getting rid of that zero that kids get. And really say 50% or something that turns it out a 1 through 4 scale, whatever it is. It just comes by. That's really stood out to me. take away besides all the technology that at least at the high school level and sure at the middle school level, make a huge difference.
Does it differ, how does it differ between the standards-based grading?
Kind of does it, but it's more the approach that we take. And so I would just say that we have to take steps to move towards more, what we will jump into as a brand new school that we're able to do. Just be like a gradual progression to get there. But we're focused less on, like, for example, we all know, like, I even my own kids, don't get your work done, get your work done. We have to shift that conversation to let's focus on learning. And that's not the grading stuff. So just turn in the work. It's like a sweatshop. We gotta get rid of that and be more innovators. This grading guy, quite frankly, is a big step.
So few manufacturing jobs left compared to other opportunities these days, and
Yeah.
it's describing the way the model shifts. Yeah.
It's really a mindset shift, philosophy shift for teachers. I think that you can be any grading system, and I think so much great grading people have an idea of what that is, what it's actually. A lot of things with the hearings with that. This is just a philosophy book. Look at what's accessible to teachers. It's going to need more than ever before.
I wondered if standards-based carried a sort of white supremacy, just in the way we express it, just like meet the standard or can impute value is the way I was thinking about it after doing a lot of learning course conversations and some of the materials that Paris has brought to us. So yeah, I'm actually really encouraged by that kind of thing because I was begging for it at the age of 14. When my parents were pushing, get your points, get your points, get your points, and I couldn't understand it. So that sounds really hopeful to me. Okay. No, I don't have another question that I can think.
Ask questions, Rachel.
Yeah, it's on. Hi, everyone. Thanks to everyone for your comments tonight and sharing your plans and giving us insight into your schools. It's kind of nice to like hear directly from you all what's going on, what you're doing. I did have a really specific question for Henry Relax. I'm really excited to hear about the idea of incorporating more curriculum that includes your students and what they look like and what their lives are actually like in the curriculum. Have you guys started doing that? Like, what's your actual, and how are you finding these, books or texts or whatever that actually, because I know from like talking to friends and people I've met through work that medical schools especially are really racist in their teachings. And they basically forget about in all people of color and how they teach how to be on the lookout for diseases and medical conditions, and it's all based on white people. So I'm really interested to see how you can bring some of, the opposite of that into our high school students' lives. We've taken is let the students in our communities of color take the lead on pointing us to things. I think that the district's initiative around the equity audit of the resources and things that we currently have, like in the library, and getting our community feedback on our curriculum and our resources in the library has been helpful. But also just the way that we shape our experiences for kids in our pathways. For example, our pharmacy teacher had kids go on an assignment and interview a person of color and their experience in the healthcare system. And so I watched the video that was really moving. A Black woman was talking about her experience going to the dentist and getting emergency dental care. And the students are reflecting on that and her perspective and
how that would shape how they would practice healthcare in the future, or what that means. And so a lot of it is the books and the resources, but also just pushing our kids to get out into the community and start looking at different perspectives in terms of my experience in healthcare could be vastly different from somebody else's, and that person's experience is just as valid as mine, if not more, in terms of making the healthcare system better. And so, like I said, just continuing with the equity audit on a lot of the things the district has given us in terms of processes and procedures for curriculum and books, but also having our teachers shape experience so that kids can go out in the community and get a different perspective in that way as well.
Right. Are you finding that your students is this creating conversation in the classrooms themselves, like with your students, like of all races, you know, opening their eyes or creating?
Yeah, there definitely has been some initial conversations and around those things, but also I think that as our staff are working through project conversations, getting used to using the protocol, getting used to being able to navigate those conversations, I think we're even going to get better at that. I think right now my staff is so amazing, but I think they feel a little reluctant sometimes because they want to make sure that they navigate those conversations in a way that is safe for everybody involved. And so that's definitely coming up, and I'm just excited that like the district is giving us courageous conversations, as like that's been super helpful in terms of having our staff navigate conversations with our students, but also with families. As families reach out to students, hey, I noticed you're covering this now, or hey, I noticed there's this different reading material, that teachers are able to form those partnerships with staff, and a lot of it is through the use of the protocol.
Awesome, thank you. I'm glad to hear that courageous conversations today. That was my super specific question for Henrietta Lacks. Thank you.
Doesn't talk much, but when she does, it matters. I'm excited too to hear all of the help that you're getting from the Courageous Conversations work. It's helping us a lot as well on the board. And I was really happy to hear about how you're working with Clarissa. Clarissa, thank you for working with the schools and that you're taking advantage of her as a resource as you're going through this work, because it's hard work. But I think we all have an open heart about it. And as we move forward in this, we're all going to grow, and it's going to be just so much better for our kids. And I think that's exciting to hear your energy about it. Makes me happy. And I think I got my other questions done. So I just want you to know, we know this has been a tough year. It's unprecedented. And we are in awe of what all of you have been able to do through this, and how I just truly believe we're all coming out on the other end better, and we'll do better for our kids than we ever have before, because we learned a lot through all of it. So thank you for your hard work. I know this has been trying, but we really do appreciate it for coming tonight. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add?
The only thing I would say, I think of when Jenny's talking about how you stood up and done the work. I think about over the course of the last year, how many times there's been a plan that's been thrown at you. And then we started planning for something, and then, okay, now we got to set that aside because something changed. Now we got to have another plan. But when it was time and the numbers finally got where we needed them to be, we were ready to make it happen. So I think that's a tremendous testament to everyone in the room and the people that aren't in the room that have done the work as well. And I would echo what you're saying, everybody's saying around the equity work. A lot of us have been here for quite a while. And I think that the work that's happening now, had it been tried to be done 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or if it, I think we did try to do some of it, but it was more for the reasons that come out of the work that we see in the professional development, just so that we could say we were doing something as opposed to truly doing the work now. And so absolutely, I know Clarissa's working quite closely with all of the buildings. And I think when we start talking about budget for next year, what we need to do is we need to make about 2 or 3 more Clarissas, because we're, you know, the fact that it's being embraced the way the work is throughout our district shows how important it is and how much people are ready to do the work. And so really we are overworking Clarissa, and we will have some more Clarissas or whoever's they are.
Could never have another Clarissa.
We can't have another Clarissa, but we'll figure it out. But anyway, I appreciate everything everyone's done. And shindig, it's been a while since I've heard the term even.
No, it kind of sounds exciting.
It does sound like a great party, but I feel like you're not that old to be using shindig.
You know, this is the feeder pattern that throws the parties. Marion
that's true.
Why East throws some great parties.
I mean, when we come back, and we will come back in the fall, because this 6-foot rule will get adjusted at some point, and it could even be later in the spring. But when we come back, we're going to come back to such energy, as all of you have said, to facilities that are better than the facilities we've had in 50 years in this district, with the demand and an interest from our families to be here. And what we've been talking about for a while is we just have to be ready to capitalize on that, and then embrace everyone coming back and provide the best effort we can for all of our kids, because I've said it many times, we're only here for kids. And that's all I have to say.
And the next time we all meet, we'll be in our new building.
Yeah, that's right.
We get a new building too.
Yeah, Mary. Thank you, everyone.